everyone. Welcome back to Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thank you guys for tuning in for another episode. Jenna, we're continuing our spooky season of, creatures that we're trying to get people more educated and kind of turn around the bad reputation that some of these animals have. So what are we talking about today?
Spiders. I love fall. I love the creepy things. And I love helping people learn to love the creepy, quote unquote creepy. Yes. Yeah. I don't think they're creepy. I think they're cool and they have a great purpose. So we have one of our insect keepers here today.
Yeah, we're being joined by Kelli Walker. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Like Jenna said, member of our World of Insect team. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and coming over to educate us all about spiders. We can't wait to hear about it.
Absolutely. I love talking about spiders.
They're so neat. And again, we want to help. If we can just change one person's mind about spiders, that would be fantastic. That would make my year.
It'd be a win.
Yes, yeah. It would be a huge win, yes. And so, again, we want to talk about the spooky things for the best season of the year. Do you like fall?
I love it.
Okay, this guy over here doesn't like it.
What?
Yeah,
so
I'm just not a fall
again.
guy. I'm not
a fall guy. I love
it. It leads to winter.
Oh,
so
well, I get that.
But then it's winters. You got
Yeah.
Fall's still great.
Well, I got married on Halloween, so it's my favorite time of year for a couple different reasons. Yes.
It holds a special place in your heart for sure.
My birthday's the day before Halloween, and I think just growing up, I had celebrations around Halloween all the time. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I love Halloween too. Okay, so Kelli, thanks for joining us. We want to talk about spiders and go through some of the myths or reasons people are afraid of spiders. And there are a few different ones. They're kind of similar in ways, but we're hoping you can change people's minds.
Well, I hope I can. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to talk though, just a little quick refresher on, your background, what got you into the zoo field, what got you into insects especially? It is a very big niche in the field.
It really is, yeah. And I started off personally I volunteered for a natural history museum. So I originally wanted to work with marine mammals, and I saw that you could volunteer with insects. And I thought, well, this sounds pretty cool. This is different. Maybe I should start here and then maybe venture into something else. So I originally started at the Smithsonian's Natural History Museum, working with insects there. And that led on to the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County when I moved to California. So I started off in the museum world, which is big with insects. You tend to see a lot of insect collections in museums. And then from there, I went to San Diego Zoo, where I was for 11 years. So I stayed the insect route. I fell in love with it. I thought I was only going to volunteer.
It's kind of a big difference, hanging out with dolphins in the water versus spiders.
I love spiders. I never thought that would happen. But yeah, I thought I would volunteer for, a little while. And 7 years later, I was still doing it, and then ended up, getting a real job working with insects. And yeah, from San Diego Zoo, I came here, Cincinnati, so I've been here for 6 years. So I've only ever worked with insects, and I fell in love with it. With insects, there's such a diverse group that there's so many realms that you can kind of fall into depending on what you want to do, and live collections is just so cool to me. We learn something new every day about our animals, and there's always new species being discovered, and it's never ending.
Oh,
it's just the best thing.
I couldn't name half of the antelope species that exist, and there are a million times more insect species. I'm sure you're constantly learning something new.
Always. And it's so people think everything. People send us pictures all the time to ID stuff, and all of us are I have no idea what that is. Because there's so many insects out there. There's millions of species, literally. So yeah, we're always challenged, which is a great part of the job.
Yeah, and I always think the insect team is so cool and so unique because it is so specialized, right? There really aren't many zoos and positions out there for insect keepers. So
there's really not.
At our zoo, we're really lucky to have such a wonderful insectarium and team that takes care of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, zoos. A lot more zoos are they're really jumping on getting insect exhibits going in their institution. So like I said, it used to be in museums, it was pretty common to have not only just an insect zoo, but also an insect collection. Whereas now zoos are they're getting the hint. And they're like, yeah, this is pretty cool. So you see a lot more zoos doing it than you ever have before.
Which is hopefully kind of turning some of the social stigmas that are typically held against insects. Specifically spiders, which we're here to talk about today, because there are lots of them.
Yes, there are.
Yes, and lots of myths around them. Or I don't know if myths is the right word, but did you come up with any of your myths? I can't say that word.
I can't either.
It's a hard word to repeat over and over that we should start with.
So we do have some kind of like misconceptions, myths, or maybe they're true and maybe I'm the one that has a misconception, but we kind of like to get your expert opinion on some of these topics, that reasons that people might be scared of spiders or reasons that people might resent spiders. So we wanted to run some of these past you and get your thoughts on them, if that's good with you.
Sure.
All right, let's go with it. So one of the ones that I kept seeing over and over about why people are very scared of spiders is their erratic movement. They're really unpredictable. You don't know where they're going to go. They're just going to jump out and land on your face or something. Like, what would you say to someone who says, I'm scared of spiders because the way they move?
I don't mean to laugh, by the way. But working with them, you hear comments like this, and it is kind of funny. Well, first of all, spiders, believe it or not, can't jump, except for your jumping spiders, which is a particular group of spiders. And they're called that, obviously, because they can jump. But your bigger ones, even your smaller ones, so if you're talking about, like, ones that are commonly found around here, so your brown recluses and your black widows, they don't jump. They might move fast, but they don't jump. Your bigger spiders are just too big to do that. So when I say bigger spiders, like your tarantulas, which are also in their own group, they just don't have the ability to do that because of their morphology, because they have an exoskeleton. They can easily be harmed. If they fall, for example, off of a table, they can break that exoskeleton open, and it would most certainly be fatal. So spiders don't necessarily jump. They don't jump from trees and land on you, like a lot of people think. If the one comes down from above, it's probably hanging on a thread of silk from a web. But that's just not something that spiders do. Now, they can move fast, depending on certain species. They definitely have the ability to move quickly. Most likely to try and get away from you.
I've never seen one run towards me, just away.
I haven't either. Yeah. If they do, they don't see you. That's what I think people get confused about. I've had people say to me, oh, well, it was running after me. It's like, well, it probably wasn't running after you. It was just running in your direction.
Can you go into that? Because, most of us know or have learned that spiders have 8 eyes.
Yeah.
Is that not true? Or when you say they can't see us, what do you mean by that?
So depending on the spider species that you're talking about. So like I was just talking about jumping spiders. Jumping spiders are amazing because they have amazing vision. Like they're what we call active hunters. So they actively go out and look for prey, similar to what your wolf spiders do. And if you look at them closely, they have those big eyes. Like jumping spiders are the cutest.
They're
like
so
you can
cute.
look at you can see their eyes in the front, and they actually turn and they look at you. That's a spider that has great vision. Black widows, for example, they have 8 eyes. Brown recluses have 6.
Oh, okay.
Tarantulas have 8, but they can only detect between light and dark. So it really depends on the group of spiders that you're talking about. But most of them can really just sense between light and dark. Like
they're so much every day.
Yeah, I mean, they're not. Except for like tarantulas, they're predators, just like your jumping spiders and your wolf spiders. But they will literally wait for something to walk in front of them or by them, and the vibration tells them exactly where they are, and then they'll grab their prey. So they don't go out like jumping spiders do and look actively for prey, because their eyes just simply don't work that way. Okay. And they're in a different position, in a different part of the body, on top of the head, as opposed to jumping spiders where the eyes are facing forward and around their head as well. So it really depends on the spider. And you have to remember that there's 45,000 species of spiders in the world. So 1,000 of those are tarantulas. We have 600 different species, more than that in Ohio. So that's a number of species that you're looking at, and they all look different and act different. And so it really depends on what spider you're looking at, which one you're talking about.
So you've said 3 things that I wanted to touch on, and I forget my thoughts often, so I'm going to try and quickly go through this. You mentioned that there are over 600 species of spiders in Ohio, which is where we are, so we'll talk about that right now. Our listeners may not be from Ohio, but of those, people are most scared of the ones that, you hear about being the most dangerous. And there are, 2, maybe 3 spiders that are...
Yeah, there's not many.
So,
it's a handful, literally,
the brown recluse and the black widow are the ones that come to my mind. So put that like in your head. There are very, very few that you would even need to worry about a spider bite. And there's 600 other kinds that
most of them
are harmless and that sort of thing. And then you mentioned wolf spiders and jumping spiders they're predators. And I haven't ever thought of it that way. They're all predators,
right.
But they're hunting. They're actually going out and catching, like using their motion rather than a web.
Right.
So do those, like wolf spiders and jumping spiders have their own webs, or do they not need webs because of that?
So they don't, when you're talking about those two, for example. So spiders have silk for different reasons. So they use some spin webs, like your orb weavers that you see this time of year, the ones that you walk into their web and you get spider webs all over your face. So they use silk for different things. So for example, jumping spiders, when they jump from one place to another, they actually have a drag line of silk with them.
Wow.
So that's what they use their silk for, is just as kind of a safety net. If they jump and they miss that spot on the other side and they fall, it's kind of like somebody who bungee jumps and you're hanging there. Like they have that as a safety string, web, whatever you want to call it. So they, for example, use their silk for that way. Tarantulas use their silk to lay down what I typically call like a silk blanket or a hammock. Aww. They're too heavy to hang in webs, so they don't sit in webs like when people think of spiders, like Charlotte's Web or whatever. Like that's what people think of when they think of webs. But they weigh too much to do that. So they'll lay down silk and they'll sit on it. And that's part of that vibration when prey items come along. So they'll kind of branch it out a little bit. So anything that walks across that, they'll feel that vibration and they can reach out and grab it. They'll know exactly where it is. Orb weavers, they build those gorgeous webs that you think of when you think of a spider web in your yard, and they'll sit in dead center, hanging upside down. They actually face the ground, and they use their web to catch flying prey. So it also depends on what they eat. If they eat flying insects, they do build those beautiful, intricate webs that we think of, or they just use them as drag lines. They use them to cover up holes if they live in the ground. There are some spiders that burrow, so they'll make kind of like a silk door and that they can go in and out of if they want. So again, it just depends on the species that you're talking about.
They're so neat. And that was like a part of my third question. The silk is amazing, and I don't think of that often. What do you know about it? How do they make it? How does it?
I don't know very much about it, but I know that certain species of spiders, they can create like hundreds of lines of silk. So it depends on the species. But
it's such an incredible adaptation.
It really is.
And you just mentioned all these different reasons to use it when I'm always thinking of the webs. And I see a web and like I'm grateful that I wasn't brought up to fear spiders, so I've always found them fascinating, and I hope somebody else will after this.
Yeah.
But you look at it, and I'm like, they must have worked so hard on that. And like, of course, we have to keep things clean around here and stuff, so we will walk into the spider webs and I'll try and keep them for like as long as I can. Before I'm like, okay, I should probably like get rid of the cobwebs, which I think is a different thing too, like spider webs versus cobwebs.
In the insect house, we do that too.
I feel so guilty when I go around and like, especially the little ones that are up high in like the hippo building. I'm like, you just worked so hard to make your home, and I had to get rid of this.
Well,
I feel bad.
If it makes you feel any better, most spiders rebuild their web every night.
Okay.
Oh, that makes me feel so much better. It's prey items like orb weavers, for example. They can eat butterflies. They'll eat if a monarch or anything like that flies in. Like that's a pretty decent sized prey item, and typically they destroy the web because they're flopping around. They're trying to get out of the web, so it's not uncommon for them to scrap everything, and then at night they'll rebuild. Believe it or not, they rebuild that whole intricate web.
And they just stay there sometimes then?
If there's enough prey items, they'll stay there.
Okay, that makes sense. Because, the orb weavers are another one of my favorites.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
And they've been around hippo recently. And as you were saying, we can talk about why we'll see them more often this time of year in a second. But, like, I'll see them there for days. And, like,
sure.
I'm like, oh, hi, you're still there. But I didn't realize they were redoing it most likely.
Yeah, they can. Night. If you see one, if you happen to see one in the same spot, like go up to, you can get right up on them and they won't bother you. But I love to check out webs over a span of days, or if you're lucky if they're still there within a week. But sometimes if you go up to them, you'll see like kind of injured patterns in the web. And that's probably a prey item that's been trapped.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes you'll notice that over time it gets a little worn.
So they kind of patch it up.
And they patch it up, or they'll just rebuild it. Yeah. And some spiders, they eat their silk. Like they'll eat it and then they'll rebuild it at night. Yeah. So silk is it's really strong, but it also can be very easy to break, especially if they're catching a lot of insects in it. You know, people ask us all the time, do spiders get caught in their own webs? And it's like, yeah, they do. Like they can create silk that's sticky and silk that's non-sticky. And they know the placement, like the Nephilis spiders or the orb weaver spiders that we actually have in World of the Insect right now that are amazing. People call them banana spiders, but they can get a good couple of inches, their body. And they have their web that they sit in, which is they sit in the center of it. And then if you look above them, and a lot of orb weavers are like this, you look above that web and there's this really messy looking strands of silk. And that's where they retreat to if something scares them.
Yes, I've seen them retreat.
And they can walk on their web in just the right way to not get stuck. But if they get confused, they can get stuck just like prey can. But they know the engineering of everything that they've built, and they know where to step and where to go, and they can hide in that little retreat, and then they can come back down, and if you watch them, they know exactly where to place their feet, and then they get back in that center spot. So silk is it's fascinating. I mean, they can use it for a lot of different things.
Wow.
That's crazy. And you hear stories like they say the silk for its weight is like as strong as steel, you know, which is crazy to think. Because you see how thin the silk is, and you can't believe that these webs hold up for as large as they are. But I didn't realize that either. That's a misconception I had. I didn't know they rebuilt their webs each night.
Yeah, most of them do.
Yeah, a lot of the mornings I'll like go into giraffe or meerkat. There's like trees that kind of enclose where like we walk to the door, and I have to put my hands up like blocking my face because I've walked through so many spider webs, and they are strong.
They really are
very sticky. And the worst, well, I shouldn't say this to our listeners, when their prey ends up in my hair. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I've had that happen.
That's
yes,
the worst.
yes, I've had the spider end up in my hair once.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
I scared the heck out of it and tried to take off, and it just got stuck. But yeah. Hopefully that never happens to anyone else.
Right.
Oh man. All right, so you kind of touched on this a little bit, but another common kind of misconception that people have are that spiders are all deadly and dangerous animals. You really need to be weary of them, you need to be scared of them, and you need to give them their distance because they're all deadly, they're all dangerous. You kind of touched on this, but what would you say about that?
Well, they're not all deadly and dangerous. I think keeping your distance is probably just respectful anyway. But yeah, I mean, the ones that we have to worry about, and this is really, it's not just for locally, but like really generally in the United States, like the only venomous spiders that we have are the brown recluse and the black widow are the two most dangerous ones, and the ones that have posed a threat to humans in the past. But they're both extremely private spiders, and when I say private, like they prefer to stay away from people. They call a recluse for a reason. Right? Like it gets that name for a reason. It prefers to be by itself, and it's believe it or not, that when we've collected them, they curl up in a ball and try and roll away from you sometimes. Like they really don't want anything to do with you. So no, I think it's not really fair to spiders to say that they're all deadly and dangerous. Do spiders have the ability to bite? Well, yeah, they do. That's how they catch their prey and defend themselves. But in terms of being deadly and dangerous, no. I would have to say that's definitely a misconception about them.
I don't expect you to know the answer to this, but do you know why the brown recluse and the black widow have venom that is so much stronger or like able to cause issues for humans? Like, what are they eating? Why is there a reason behind it?
It's a good question, and one I can't answer like that because they're not eating anything. They typically eat crickets and small insects, and yeah, I mean that's what we have a brown we have a brown recluse, and they eat the same thing that our tarantulas eat. They eat less. You know, they don't eat near as much as a tarantula would eat, but yeah, the fact that their venom is just so strong, that's a good question. Yeah.
And then where would people likely come across them? Because not knowing what they look like or being able to identify them, like the black widow, you have to have the perfect view of one of them, a female, correct, right?
Yes.
To be able to tell them apart.
Yeah.
And a brown recluse looks a lot like a lot of other spiders.
It does.
I mean, I've heard there's a way to tell them apart. And if you want to go into that for us and kind of like where you would most likely run into one of them, it's probably not as common as people think, right?
It's not. I mean, typically they're both species of spiders they both hide. So typically brown recluses, they love, if you're going to be outside, they love like wood piles. typically pretty dark places. Black widows they're the same thing. They both are low to the ground. Black widows hang in webs, whereas brown recluses, even if they have silk around, they're going to be most likely sitting on the ground. Typically when people are bitten, they're grabbing something, and they don't know the spider is there. So that's usually when bites are reported as someone, like, I always hear the woodpile story, like they're reaching in to grab some wood for their fireplace or whatever, and there's a spider living under there. And that's usually when people get bitten. Okay. Black widows, typically it's the females. The females are big. The males are a lot smaller. A lot of times they're there, but you don't see them because they're so small. Their webs are very irregular. You can tell a black widow because the giant females are black with the red hourglass underneath. There's something called a false widow that gets misidentified all the time because they look exactly like a black widow, but they don't have the hourglass, the red hourglass underneath. And brown recluses, and yes, you're right, like every brown spider is a brown recluse. And we hear that all the time, and people bring them to us all the time. Now, you have to remember, too, that there are, when it comes to black widows, there's 30 plus different species.
Oh, I
so
had no
it
idea.
depends on, again, where you are in the world, like depending on what species you have. And there's certain species of brown recluses. I'm not sure how many different species, and they vary, like how they look vary in between the species. But typically, you have that violin kind of shape on the cephalothorax, which is the front region of a spider. But they don't have, like certain spiders you look at have, like, they look like hairs, but they're spikes kind of all over their bodies. Brown recluses don't have that. They have very tiny, kind of flat hairs on them.
Okay.
And if you get close enough, which I'm sure a lot of people don't want to get close enough, but the brown recluses have the 6 eyes, and they're in 2 pairs. There's 3 of 2 pairs.
Okay.
6. Yes, I might be saying that wrong. But you can actually see that when you look at them up close. You can see the position of the eyes on top of their cephalothorax. So, and they have very long, skinny legs. So I don't know if you've ever seen wolf spiders. Like we have wolf spider species in Ohio, and people misidentify them all the time as brown recluses because they look similar.
But wolf spiders are often. I'm sure there are so many species. I thought black widows were a species. I didn't know there were 30 different.
There's different kinds of species. There's the West Coast black widow is different from the one you see here.
Okay,
Interesting.
It makes sense.
Yep.
But
I mean, they look very similar.
Okay.
You probably wouldn't be able to tell them apart if you saw them. But
okay.
Yeah.
But so I could be wrong in saying this, but wolf spiders are often bigger, and brown recluses are pretty small, right?
They are.
So
they're probably the size. I mean, if I had to guess, maybe like the size of your thumbnail.
Okay.
Like they're pretty small. Like most of the time, I'm guessing you probably don't even know that they're there, because we just don't come in contact with them all the time because they're hiding all the time. But they're a relatively small spider. So we do have spiders that are kind of along that size that are brown, and people like cobweb spiders, for example, that you see a lot of around the zoo, the spiders that you're talking about that we have to clean up all the time, which to me look nothing like a brown recluse, but to somebody else it looks identical to a brown recluse. So always assume that if it's low, or if, I should say, if you see something and it's high, so if it's up in the corner of your room, that's not going to be a brown recluse. That's not what they do.
I think that's very helpful for people to hear.
Yeah, I think it's probably a cobweb spider, which are the ones with the really, really long legs and small bodies. But they can go high. They build the webs high up in the room or in your garage or in your basement. They're in your basement. Cellar spiders is what they call them too. That's not a brown recluse. Brown recluses are going to be really low in dark spots. And you're most likely, if you do come across one, you're probably going to be moving things around.
Okay.
Moving, like if it's in your basement, a box, or again, a wood pile outside. Something that hasn't been moved for quite a long time because they prefer to be in spots that aren't disturbed. Whereas other spiders will move around a lot more.
Okay. And also I think oftentimes people think the bigger the spider, the scarier.
Yeah.
But it's probably the opposite, right? I mean, I don't really know if you could say that as a whole, but like a bigger wolf spider doesn't mean more danger. It's just
It's just a bigger spider.
That was
and less likely to be a brown recluse.
Yeah, that was one I definitely wanted to ask, because you'll hear people like I've heard when I've just walked through the insectarium before, I've heard people look at the tarantulas and say, now that's the deadliest spider. They'll kill you. So it's like, I wanted you to just speak on that really quick, because people are just deadly afraid of tarantulas. And they have the worst reputation for no reason to me.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like, it's so funny to me because, the bigger the spider, I mean, they've just gotten the reputation of being they must be deadlier because they're bigger. They must have more venom. Their fangs are bigger. Their fangs are definitely bigger. But typically, they're the ones that aren't. They're like, we always say, they're like little puppy dogs in the inside.
They're harmless,
like,
right?
Yeah, they're harmless. They're not really. Now, again, like they can bite like any other animal, right? But they tend to be big and scary to people. A lot of people say that all the hair and the legs freak them out. Because on a tarantula, the legs have a lot to do with how a tarantula moves. I guess how all spiders move.
Yes,
but tarantulas are I think, and this is just my opinion and what I've heard people say in the past. With a big tarantula, you can see a lot more features that you couldn't see with like a smaller spider. So like a black widow or a brown recluse. Most people don't get close enough to really observe, the morphology of an animal. But with tarantulas, you can see the hair. You can see the spinnerets off the back where they spin the silk from. Yeah. They can extend their fangs out when they want to, so you can see fangs up close if you really get close enough. But yeah, tarantulas are also, they've been in the pet trade for a long time, which is not necessarily good for them. But because they're so low maintenance in terms of how they eat and how they live, a lot of people have had them for pets for years because they can, depending on the species, be easy to work with. But yeah, they definitely strike a lot of fear in people. I think spiders in general probably do, but.
Yeah, and you touched on the number before, but I just wanted to reiterate it because I did think it was illuminating when I saw it. There's 45,000 species of spiders, and scientists estimate between the 45,000, only 30 to 40 of those are dangerous to humans.
Yeah.
Which is 0.1%.
Yeah, right.
So
it's very
0.1%,
low.
about 1 out of every 1,000 spiders.
Yeah. And think about, I always talk to people about in terms of what's in the United States. There's not much. There's not much in the U.S. If you think about the funnel web spider in Australia, if you go outside the United States, those, in my opinion, those are the ones that are a lot more dangerous. Like the funnel web is one of the most dangerous species on the planet, which you would never see here.
Yeah, that's the one you hear about in Australia, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know any statistics as far as it goes with human deaths and brown recluse or black widow?
So in terms of when it comes to a black widow, the last recorded death in the United States was in the early 80s. It was like 1983. So, people typically, if they do have an issue with a spider bite, so if they do get bitten by a black widow, for example, you could be allergic to the venom. Like if you're younger or if you're older and you already have some health issues, a spider bite probably isn't going to make that any better. So if there are people that have had a lot of issues with bites or deaths, for example, it's probably a lot of other things, but it's in terms of an actual death being recorded. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think spiders get blamed for a lot in terms of
40 years ago since the last one.
Yeah. So, my opinion is I highly doubt that there's probably a lot more being recorded as that, and it probably isn't that. I'm sure there were a lot of other factors involved.
Right, because there's so many insects that can bite, and
bee stings. Yes. Bee stings, that to me is more dangerous.
Wow, yes.
Than anything else that we work with. There are so many people that can go into anaphylactic shock. Yeah, that would literally, they carry the EpiPens with them. That's a legit concern. I totally understand that, and I talk to people all the time about the issues that they've had with bee stings, and that's more of an issue than a spider bite would be.
And the spider bites can be misidentified because if you don't see what's biting you or stinging you, then it's assumed that it's a spider when it may not be.
Right. So, spider bites, they routinely go misdiagnosed. I think a lot of doctors also like to blame things on spider bites and I always say to people that, because people tell me, of course, all the time, I've been bitten by this spider or that spider. And it's like, well, did you see the spider? That's the important thing. If you know for a fact that you've been bitten by a spider, try and save the spider. I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but if you can, dead or alive, try and save it. But most of the time they're misdiagnosed. You could get, to me, a mosquito bite is worse. that would actually well up on your skin. You'd have a red mark. It would itch. Sometimes it would burn. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a spider.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of spiders get blamed for a lot of that. There are a lot of staph infections that get blamed as a spider bite. I've read that the herpes virus has been labeled as a spider bite. So there are a lot of things that spiders get blamed for that. And I think sometimes doctors are stumped. When people go in, they really are. Like, I think they're trying, like someone said, oh, I got bit by a spider. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a spider bite. So it can very easily happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, easy to kind of have a misconception about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one we have for you that is potential myth is I've read a lot about people who think that while they're sleeping at night, they're swallowing spiders in their sleep, or spiders, like minuscule spiders, are crawling in your
your mouth,
yeah,
your
crawling
ear.
in your mouth. What do you think of that one?
There is zero evidence of that, and I have heard that so many times. Yeah, like that is probably. I admit I looked up some of the urban legends out there, and it's amazing what's out there, and that's like the number one thing. And first of all, spider, like your mouth is not a great home for a spider. That's not where they want to be at all. If you wake up in the middle of the night and there's a spider in your mouth, it probably just fell in there as it was just walking across you to get to where it wanted to go. But we are not where spiders want to live. So if they crawl in your ear, if they happen to do that, it's totally by mistake. That is not what a spider home looks like. They'd rather
also
be
probably not common.
It's
right.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, they prefer other places than the human body to live. So yeah, that's not.
And
that's
my
not
brain
one.
goes to, if you're swallowing them while you sleep and you have no idea, what's the harm? You're
What's the
you woke up.
You didn't know any better.
Exactly.
Got a little extra protein intake today.
See, that's the best way to look at it.
So if I woke up with a spider in my mouth, I would definitely freak out.
Yes,
But
yeah.
no, I don't think it really happens.
That one was funny because that's very prevalent online, and I've never once in my life heard that before.
I've definitely heard it before.
And
But
I guess it makes sense if, like, we talk about, like, what makes people so scared of spiders? Where does this fear come from, kind of thing? And it makes sense if these kind of stories are what's going around about spiders. It makes sense why you would be scared of spiders. You think they're crawling in your ears and going to your brain, and
well, you think
it's
about
totally false.
these stories get passed on, right?
Sure.
Like, so fear of spiders typically, and we ask as an insect team, we ask people this kind of thing all the time because when we do tours or presentations, we commonly get these questions, like, and I always ask people, like, well, why are you afraid of spiders? Where did you hear that story? Well, my mom told me, or my grandfather told me growing up that, they come out of, they crawl in your mouth and all these. So these stories have just been passed around for decades, if not longer.
Right.
Like, it's just, and of course it puts even more fear into people.
Sure.
And yeah, they just get passed around.
So somebody said one of the reasons they're afraid of them is because they hide from you, and I wanted to talk about that because there's a reason they're hiding.
They are
from
hiding
you.
from you. Yeah.
And that's a good point as to why you don't need to be afraid of them. But they're actually probably afraid of you, or just trying to go about their lives waiting for some prey to walk by.
Yeah.
So take that as a good sign if they're hiding from you.
Yeah. So there was. I just thought of something that somebody said. There was actually an entomologist said. No matter where you are, this is actually not true. This is why I'm bringing this up. But no matter where you are in the world, where you're standing, there's always a spider 3 feet from you, and that's actually not true. So if you're out on a hike or you're in your backyard, yeah, maybe. Like, it depends on the time of year. There's probably a spider a few feet from you hiding, or in a web, but if you're on a plane, or if you're, there are definitely spots where they're not hiding from you, and they're probably not right there. But in terms of spiders actually hiding from you, that's just actually what they do. Most spiders want to find a place where it's private. There's no predators because there are a lot of animals out there that eat spiders. So, yeah, I guess they do hide from you, but probably not in the macabre way that people are thinking. You know what I mean? Like, it's so funny how as humans we always take it as it's hiding from me, or it's going to do something to me if it comes out of its hiding
so
spot.
That it can sneak
so
up
it can
on
sneak
me,
up on me.
But
Yeah,
it's
there you
hiding
go.
so
Yeah.
that you can't find it.
Yeah, it literally does not want you to find it.
Yes. And then we were talking earlier about the giant orb weavers, and we're seeing more of them lately. And I also, for one reason, that's not great, but a reason That's great also. And I wanted to go into, I wonder if that's why spiders became a Halloween thing. And Halloween is supposed to be scary and spooky and creepy. And I wonder if all of that got tied into why spiders are a part of Halloween and people are scared of them. But will you tell us about why we might be seeing more spiders this time of year in general, and what's going on that we might see extra?
Yeah, so typically you'll see, there's usually an influx of spiders like towards the end of summer, early fall. Because believe it or not, spiders, they can overwinter. Most people don't realize that. Like baby spiders can stay in the eggs and overwinter. And you'll also see that a lot of them come out in the spring. But typically with spiders, you'll see they'll mate and lay their eggs in like late summer. So you'll see a lot of spiders around this time of year. So
just
people
because
always
more
say,
hatching.
There's more hatching,
more spiders.
And also, there's because of climate change, we have the warmer months are getting longer. So, and I love this fact that spiders have actually more time to lay eggs and, a little bit more warmer months. So we're going to have a lot more spiders. So people always say, oh, all of a sudden I have all these spiders in my backyard. And why? Why are we seeing, and it's actually always happened. This is just the time of year where you're going to see a lot of spiders. They're out there laying their eggs, and, a lot of them will overwinter, and then we'll see them come out again next year. So
I'm sure a lot of people don't want to hear that there will be more. And I get that you're excited there will be more. Climate change obviously isn't a good reason. We don't want that happening. Exactly. And, it shouldn't be as warm as it is for as long as it is in a lot of places. But that is one of the reasons that we might be seeing more spiders recently.
Yeah, and exactly. It's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
It just means that there are a lot more warmer months. And they're going to be out a little longer. And there's a girl I work with who's working on a research project actually at UC with spiders. And they go out and they like to see what's out there and what the numbers look like, for collection. And she was saying that typically this time of year they see more young spiders, like baby spiders, and they're actually seeing ones that are a little bit older, which is very rare.
Oh.
And it's because of that.
Okay.
Because it's the environment is changing.
They're hatching sooner, I guess.
Exactly. So
the older ones are still alive when they might have ended their life cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, so how quickly, what is the average life cycle if you can answer that for over 600 species, but how can you tell it's a baby? How quickly or how long does it take for them to look full grown?
Yeah, and it depends on the species. Okay. Again, your average spider lives about a year. Okay. Black widows can live a few years. Tarantulas can live 20 to 30. Wow, so it just depends again on the species. With spiders, again, remember you have tiny spiders. You have species that are really small, so they're babies. You probably couldn't even see them, but we raise, for example, the golden orb weaver spider in World of the Insect, and the baby spiders they look like baby spiders. They hatch out of the egg cases in the back, and there's usually 100 to 300 of them. They don't necessarily look like the adults, but they have the 2 body parts and the 8 legs like the adults would. And as they grow and molt, they change a little bit as they get bigger. And the orb weavers that we have, typically they'll live about a year.
Okay, and when do they look like adults? What, at 6 months? What point are they looking like adults?
Yeah, it's usually at about 6 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 to 6 months or so.
Speaking of babies, we were talking about this earlier with one of our coworkers, Teresa, and I think one of the things that we haven't talked about yet that creep people out are that, especially wolf spiders that I'm familiar with, will carry their babies on their backs.
I love
and if
that.
you come across that and then they scatter, I can imagine that would be a little bit creepy.
Yeah, sure.
But can you talk about wolf spider moms? That sounds pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Or anything about,
So arachnids in general, obviously spiders are arachnids, but you have other animals in that group as well. So you have scorpions, whip spiders, vinegaroons. I don't know if you guys know what those are.
Yeah, I worked with them in the interpretive
they're
collection.
So cool. Yeah, pseudoscorpions and camel spiders, which are those ones that I don't even know how to explain them. I'd have to show a picture, which obviously people can't see, but and a lot of we have emperor scorpions. They carry their babies on their back.
Yes, I've seen that.
So
too.
not all of them do it, but some spider species do. Some of the whip spiders that we have, or whip scorpions is what some people call them. they carry their babies on their back as well. So they're actually great moms. I mean, it's amazing to see. Now they also, if they get in certain positions and they might be hungry, they also sometimes eat their young. So I mean, it's kind of
great
best
moms.
of both worlds, right? But
how long are they carrying them? Do you know?
It depends on the species, but the average is about 2 weeks. So
Okay.
for example, with our emperor scorpions, they usually carry them for about 2 weeks. And during that 2-week time period, and you'll see this with some spiders too, like they'll kind of venture off mom's back and they'll, not too far from her, but they'll wander around, then they'll jump back on.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, they and if they get scared, they'll jump back on.
My
And
goodness.
then
That's
they
so
go.
cute. How
I know,
cute
it's
is that?
amazing.
That's
Yeah.
cute.
I know that, especially if you see like wolf spiders, they're the great example because there's just hundreds on her back. Like they're so tiny, they can hold a lot. And so, and if they all disperse at the same time, obviously it can be a very, traumatizing experience to some people. To me, I think it's amazing. But yeah, they'll stay up there for a couple weeks, and then with emperor scorpions, they will actually stay with the female, with the mom indefinitely.
Wow.
Like you can keep them together with her, and it's in the very beginning stages though that the moms are very protective of their babies.
Do they help feed them? Are they hunting
They can,
and sharing?
yeah. Usually
or?
in the first couple weeks, they don't really eat that much. So they're
Okay.
just kind of sitting up there. They're developing. They're waiting to go through that first molt. In the world of the insect, when we feed them, we'll usually give them like thawed out frozen crickets. So it's a prey item that's not necessarily jumping around and they have to chase it. Mm-hmm. It's easier for they do more of like, they'll walk up to it and kind of chew pieces off of it. But the mother will help them eat. And she'll take her claws and kind of corral them back, so they stay around her. Like, and when you think of even a spider or any kind of arachnid doing that, like we don't look at those animals as having those motherly instincts, and it's definitely it's a different type of motherly instinct. Like they act on instinct first of all. Most of it is instinctual what they're doing, but it's still pretty amazing to see. Yeah.
For the wolf spiders or any of them, but. Where is the egg case? Is it on their back? How does they end up on their back?
Well, the egg case is usually carried underneath. So again, depending on the spider, it's different.
Okay.
But they usually they create that, they use silk. That's one of the things they use silk for, to create this kind of protective covering for the egg. So they'll kind of attach it under their abdomen and they'll drag it around with them. So yes, as they hatch out, they crawl up onto her back.
So
and again,
like
it's an instinctual thing. Yeah, it's an instinctual thing what they do.
What about a spider that builds a web? Where do they have their egg? Are they attaching their egg cases to their...
No, so the orb weavers, for example, like we have, they'll walk off and they'll attach an egg case to like the side of their habitat, for example. So they'll kind of walk away from the web, so it's not on the web at all. But they use that silk again, and they'll just kind of attach it to anything that's nearby, and that could be wood. It could in nature, it could be a lot of solid material.
Okay.
So they'll hatch away from her. So that's an example of an animal that the spiders are not going to climb on their backs. They're not going to take care of them. Once the spiders hatch, they're on their own.
Okay.
So it just depends on the species.
Okay.
Which is probably more common in the insect kingdom. You don't really think of insects taking care of their young and exhibiting parental care. Like, what's more relatable than that as humans? You're just carrying around your babies on your back.
I know. And again, it's amazing how it's certain species. I mean, there are a lot of scorpion species that do that. But, you just don't think of, especially arachnids, doing that. They can't see their young. So again, everything is based on instinct. They know it's their young.
And
they
the
know
babies,
that.
the animals that their babies stay with their mother and they don't run away towards danger like human kids. Like I'm kind of jealous of them. Like the opossum moms, the babies like want to stay on her. The gorillas, they just like hang out there until a certain age. Like
emperor scorpions get really. We tip. If we find a female scorpion on exhibit, for example, we come in one morning and we're out there feeding all of our animals before the zoo opens. Sometimes we'll find females with babies on their back. And it's kind of a shame, but guests don't usually see that because we remove them and put them in the keeper area because it's quiet back there. It's a little more private. So we give them their privacy when they have babies. But the females get very aggressive. So when I take their lid off to check on them and they stinger goes up, claws open, it's their nature when they have young. Yeah, it's amazing.
I didn't even think of scorpions. That probably could be added to the list for the spooky animals, but I never really thought of them as arachnids either. And I think one of the things that makes spiders a little bit creepy to people is the fact that they have 8 legs. So scorpions, would their claws be counted as 8, or are all the arachnids, do they all have 8 legs?
They all have 8 legs. So it depends. Like with spiders, for example, you have the 2 main body regions. So you have the front region, which is called the cephalothorax. That's where all the legs come off of. And then that kind of ball region in the back is their abdomen.
Okay.
So yeah, arachnids they're all in different shapes and sizes. So it just depends. But yeah, for the most part, they have the 8 legs and 2 body regions. They just look different.
Any like adaptational reason for 8 legs that you could explain to people why they have 8 legs specifically, or is it just
it's a good question?
Helps them climb, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, insects or arthropods in general have been around for millions of years. If anything, they've just gotten smaller. They used to be a lot bigger. So that's just something that works for them and helps them. They're also, you have to think about, like, even if you're looking at a tarantula, like, it's really a small animal.
Right.
I mean, it's not, that those legs help them move around and the environments that they live in. So it's something that works for them. Yeah.
Which is something else I say to people who are afraid of spiders. I kind of, like, use my logical brain, and I'm like, you are so much bigger than them. Like, I don't encourage anyone to kill a spider, but if you need to, you have 100% advantage. Like, if you see them, like, you can squish them with anything, and they literally can't do anything.
I know.
To you. Like,
and I
fight back.
Again, I hear that all the time. Like, it's amazing to me how everything in our building is so much smaller. And it's amazing the fear that it strikes in people. And it's even just roaches.
Yeah.
Roaches, like, there's all other kinds of insects that are just so much smaller. And it's people, they act like, and I mean, I'm glad that insects aren't a lot bigger than they are. But it's kind of amazing how it just terrifies people.
Yes, we need to put that on the list.
Advantage,
Next fall season, we'll do scorpions and cockroaches.
Yes.
Come up with something
else
too. Do you have any more of the misconceptions?
I don't have any. I was going to ask if you had any we missed.
I don't think I have anything we missed, so I wanted to take a minute to talk about why spiders are so important, or the ecological positives that they have, or that they provide.
So one thing we always think is important to tell people is don't be so quick to kill everything you see in your backyard just because you're afraid of it. Spiders are extremely beneficial to their environment. They are actually the one thing that keeps insect populations in check. So that cockroach that you have in your basement, or that cricket that's running around, that's what they eat. That's what they consume. So they're really keeping all of that in line for you in your backyard and in any environment that they live in. So just educate yourself on the species that you have, and
there's a reason they're here, right? Like, without them, everything would be out of balance.
Absolutely.
So they have a role. And if maybe you don't love spiders, but I bet you wouldn't like thousands of crickets in your house
either.
And that's an extreme, I don't really know, what would happen. But they do keep the population in check, and they play an important role.
Yes.
And you have to keep checks and balances.
Exactly. And also think of, and insects kind of fall in this too, really a lot of arthropods do, that there are other animals that just rely on that for their diet.
Yes.
So there are, lots of birds, 3 to 5,000 species of birds, I think, that just eat spiders.
Wow.
And so what would happen to those birds if the spiders were gone?
Right.
Yeah.
So, everything is a domino effect,
exactly.
Right? So, I mean, they're just as important as a lot of other animals that you may find pretty.
Yes.
Or cute, or, sometimes it's the ones that you might not find so attractive that are extremely important. They have their place.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like, would you rather have 1,000 mosquitoes buzzing around you at all times, or a couple of spiders in your yard to keep those mosquitoes in check?
Yes, I mean, think about all the animals that eat mosquitoes. I mean, there's always something out there eating something else that you may not like. So
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the fact that a lot of spiders are beautiful or fascinating or interesting in some regard. Do you have a couple of favorites that you work with in the world of insect?
I've never worked with them, but I definitely have a couple of favorites. I've never actually even seen them in person. I would love to.
Okay.
Now I'm interested to hear why they're your favorites.
Yeah, there's one called the trash line spider. So you can look this up online. It's called a trash line. There's a couple of them. You can find YouTube video. They're hysterical. It's a spider that saves the carcasses of things that it's eaten, and it places it in its web for camouflage. And it also it protects its young by using all these different. It collects. So they call it a trash line because if you look at their web. And you can look up pictures of this.
I'm going to.
It's just, it has all these just pieces. It looks like dirt or just leaves or pieces of wood or whatever, and the spider's sitting right in the middle of it.
But then you can't
and it
find
blends
it.
In. You can't find it. Yeah, it's so funny. And there's one called the net casting spider or an ogre face spider, and they build. They have giant eyes, so they can see really well. But they use their silk to create a net. Kind of like a fishing net that you would throw out. So they kind of hover right above the ground, and they hold this net that they've made themselves, and they just watch and wait. They watch the ground and they wait for crickets to come along, and then they cast the net on it and pull it in. It's you can find it on YouTube.
Wow.
It's the cutest thing. It's the funniest thing.
It's so impressive.
It shows you just how diverse spiders are. They don't just all sit in a web and wait for something to come along. They don't all build webs and sit in the center. They do so many different cool things. And if you just sit, I wish I've seen those net casting spiders in person. I would sit there forever and just
Where
watch
are they
them.
found in the world?
They're more in warmer climates. So I think there's a species in Florida, so they're more southern.
Okay.
So they like it pretty hot and humid.
What do we need to do to get them world famous insectarium?
Seriously. I would love something like that. There's I could go on forever. There's so many different species that do the coolest things to catch their prey. Yeah.
Which I encourage people to look up. I was going to encourage people to look up jumping spiders because I think they're cute.
They're totally cute.
And I've never seen it, but apparently there's a show called Luca or Lucas.
Lucas the Spider.
I forgot about that.
And apparently people who are afraid of spiders, if you watch that, it might be able to change your mind. It's like a Pixar type.
It is. I
show,
love that they
right?
did that. I think it's amazing.
So you
that
have
they
seen it?
I have, yeah.
Okay. It's like a short film, right?
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And he kind of... I think he talks, right?
Okay.
I don't know if he just squeaks or talks. I can't remember, but it's cute. They definitely did it after a jumping spider. So whoever did that, kudos to you. That's so cute.
Did you end up watching it?
I was gonna say I watched a short bit of it on YouTube. Hopefully, it is kind of reversing the trend of the hate spiders because they are so cute, and it's funny because. We had Jenna on to talk about snakes and kind of the bad reputation that snakes have. And she said she was actually at one time scared of spiders. And what turned it around for her was watching the videos of Lucas the Spider. So I was like, if it worked on, like we said at the beginning of this podcast, if Lucas turned it around for one person, that's a win. That's amazing.
Do you have trivia today? Or is...
I do have trivia for you guys. If you're up for it, Kelly. If you're up for some spider trivia.
Let's do it.
So we talked about, it's obviously all spider related today. We talked about at the beginning of the podcast, this is spooky season. You see cobwebs decorating people's houses this time of year. It's a pretty popular decoration. Cobwebs, spider webs. What is the largest spider web ever found?
Oh my god!
How big was it in diameter? And kudos if you can guess the species. I've never heard of the species before, but there's thousands of spider species I've never heard of.
Oh man!
So I just saw one of the... I assume it was an orb weaver or garden spider is what I've seen or heard them called up by Hippo the other day. I love them. And hers was probably 5 feet in diameter.
Yeah.
Not the center circle part, but where it
stretches out.
has. Is that what we're counting?
Yeah, some of the bridges, I think they're called. Yeah, the bridges
I'm
of the web.
going to guess 12 feet.
12 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to guess around that because I've seen the largest one I've seen was an orb weaver. It was in Costa Rica.
Ooh.
Oh,
and it spanned about that far across. Those spiders are a lot bigger than what we get here. But that would be, I would say 12 to 15, something like that.
You guys are actually way low on this one.
Oh boy.
It's about 82 feet
What?
in diameter. It's insane. So it is a species of orb weaver. It's called the Darwin's bark spider, and it's found in Madagascar.
Cool. Of course.
Whoa, of course, yeah.
Australia or Madagascar. There's wild things happening over there.
Oh my god.
Wait, how could it even... I don't understand.
82 feet in diameter.
When they go low, how do they get back up to do they just trace that? So if they put their web down
anchor?
at, let's say, my hip height, and it touches something, yes, their anchor. Mm-hmm. Do they climb back up that? And then how do they get to something higher?
They just climb up. So they usually, that species, I don't know.
Insane.
That's
like,
totally different. But like, depending on the spider, like they usually build out the frame first, or the anchors. They'll put the anchors in and then they'll start building out the frame. But they can, once they put the anchors in, like they can use the silk to get around, to climb around.
So like they put an anchor up high, they like, in my
like with
mind,
the
they drift down,
yes,
anchor it, and then they turn off their silk, climb back up.
No, they usually never do that. Like I've watched the orb weavers in our building build their webs, like because we'll, if we clean an exhibit, we'll put them in something that clearly doesn't have web, and we'll always give them twigs or pieces of wood to climb on, and that's typically what they do is they'll just climb around and drag silk as they go along.
Okay.
So they'll put like anchors of silk as they go around.
Which makes sense, but do you know what I mean? You're not seeing you're not seeing a parallel one with...
Yeah. Oh, I think I know what you're saying.
So like, if there was an X, and the bottom X... This is probably horrible for our listeners right now. I know. Like this one to the parallel doesn't have anything.
Right. Oh gosh,
good
question.
I think it almost, I could be wrong here, Kelly, you know better than I think they almost start from like, think of a spider web as like a circle. They almost like start on the outside of the circle and then work their way in.
That makes sense to me too, but I still don't get the
anchor part. I think you're talking about the anchor part, like how they start from like...
It's not like there's one, so let's say they start in a tree, they come down, I'm thinking of the hippo wall, they attach to the hippo wall. There's not a line going across horizontally to the next anchor point. So do they climb back up that anchor point?
Oh, I see what
you're saying. Can.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but then how do they jump up? They don't jump. So how are they getting up to the next anchor point?
They're probably climbing up a silk line.
Climbing up a silk line and then walking over, but not dragging their silk during that walk, in my mind. Anyways, we'll move on.
It's very complex.
Yes.
This is engineering talk right here.
We need to videotape a spider making a web.
I know.
Should have given everybody a warning. Like, fast forward 30 seconds right now.
Oh, man. All right, so that 82-foot web, that's something else.
What was the spider called again?
It's called the Darwin's bark spider.
Oh, yes.
And I couldn't find a photo of the 82-foot web, but any of the webs that these spiders are building, it's a sight to be seen. It's insane, yeah. All right, and Kelly, you had mentioned some of these kind of fascinating, beautiful spiders. I wanted to touch on a couple of those because there's so many cool, unique spiders out there. It's good to give them a shout out. So this spider is named after a bird species, and it has very bright markings on its abdomen, and it displays those bright abdomen markings in courtship.
Is it like a paradise spider?
Paradise. That's not a bad guess. You're guessing after like the bird of paradise.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess the peacock jumping spider.
She's got it. Yeah.
I had to look that one up.
The peacock jumping spider. I would encourage any listener to go Google this right
Absolutely.
now. Their markings are so striking. They're gorgeous.
They really are. Jumping spider. Again, we keep going back to jumpers because they're so cool. Like a lot of them have these dance rituals that they do, and the peacock jumping spiders have that. I don't know a lot about their morphology, but it's like that something that comes up, the flap that comes up, and they can wave it around.
Yeah, they like raise their abdomen off the ground.
They raise their abdomen off the ground, or like it's cool to watch.
It really does kind of look like a peacock displaying its tail.
It does, and they go back and forth and move it. Yeah,
it's just as
really
colorful
cool.
too, and they kind of dance during courtship. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to look it up.
It's the males that do it. It's to attract the females. Yeah,
cute
peacock spider. You nailed that one. All right, this one was just mind blowing to me when I found this out. So the diving bell spider. This spider has a very unique adaptation that it uses to dive underwater.
Wow.
How does it dive underwater?
Does it like blow little bubbles or something? It can use bubbles. I feel like I must have seen something about this. No?
I don't know a whole lot about that species, but they create like a bubble of air around their abdomen, which is where they would breathe from. So it's kind of like it's their own scuba gear.
Yeah, you guys have it.
Right?
You guys have it. It's these air bubbles. So they use their silk to trap these air bubbles around their abdomen, and they can create their own, basically, like you said, scuba gear to dive underwater, which is like, this spider is more intelligent than I am. I could never figure that out. Like, that is wild stuff.
What do they hunt?
So they actually are the only spider known to live their entire life cycle underwater.
They live underwater.
Wait, they live underwater?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I assumed they were like on the surface, the edge of a lake or something.
They'll create these environments underwater where they can climb up in them and breathe.
Yeah.
They can breathe in
so
there.
they'll kind of
that's
like
on the list I need to look up.
They'll kind of come back to the surface, it sounds like, to kind of like touch up their silk covering and make sure that it's still waterproof and there's still air in there and everything. So they will come up to the surface periodically, but their whole life cycle is going to be underwater, which is
so crazy.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
builds
the
some
diversity.
What are they eating though? That didn't get answered. Do we know?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would imagine like fishing spiders, which don't live underwater like that, but they can dive in water and come back out. They'll go after a little minnows,
I was wondering
fish
if
and
it was
stuff like
fish
that.
or like
they'll
little
eat other
aquatic
insects too,
okay.
but that species specifically, I'm not sure, but I would imagine it's probably along the same lines.
Yeah.
Wow.
The fish are small enough. Yeah.
So cool.
Spiders are wild. Man. It's just crazy stuff. Alright, this is maybe not the best depiction of a spider, but it comes from my favorite movie ever, so I had to include it in today's trivia. So, there's this famous movie called Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Return of the King. Specifically Return of the King. So in this movie, Gollum tricks Frodo and Sam in their trip to Mordor. In an attempt to steal the One Ring, he leads them to this spider. What is the name of the spider?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think you've seen this movie.
Idea.
If I get this wrong, I'm going to be
tried
so
to watch
embarrassed.
this in high school and I couldn't do it.
Isn't it Aragon? No.
That's actually the spider's parent.
Oh, seriously?
It's Shelob.
Oh my gosh,
Shelob,
okay, no, I did not know that.
Yeah, so Shelob, but the spiders, it's Aragon is, not to be confused with Aragorn, who's the king, but Aragon is Shelob's parent spider.
How did I not know this? I didn't realize that there was a parent
involved. Sorry, it's like I said, probably not the best depiction because I'm sure this might be like something that traumatized some of our listeners.
It actually has. People have talked to me about it.
It's like, imagine like a spider the size of a human and it's trying to eat our Hobbit heroes. So it's not the best depiction of a spider.
Movies don't give spiders a good
I know. Tolkien didn't do any favors to spiders with that one.
No. Between that and Harry Potter.
There
were the giant spiders in Harry Potter,
giant
too.
Spider in Harry Potter, yeah.
Well, and that's where a lot of...
that one.
We didn't talk about this earlier, but that's where a lot of fear comes from is media and movies
pop
and
culture.
how they portray them. And
I remember I was little. It was like some holiday where my whole like extended family was together, and my uncle went to like relax after. It was probably like Thanksgiving or something, and Arachnophobia was on just regular TV. And he was just in, like, the little living room off to the side where everyone was hanging out, relaxing, watching that. And I was young. I was probably, like, 6 or 7. Like, old enough to remember, just enough that I was scared of spiders after that for a little while because I walked into some
horror movie,
yeah.
And I saw a balled-up black sock in my babysitter's dryer. And I thought it was a tarantula or spider. Like, that's a weird memory that I have, but arachnophobia definitely is one of those.
Yeah.
If people can, like, go into movies like that and just, like, keep in mind, like, this is...
It's fantasy.
It's a comedy.
Yeah.
Really. Like, it's obviously not real and, like...
Ridiculous.
But it can trigger some people.
I'm glad it didn't last, because I really like it.
I know, good. I'm happy to hear that.
All right, so I want to go from... This is our final question here, but I wanted to go from a negative depiction of a spider in pop culture to a surprisingly very positive depiction of a spider in pop culture. So this is a book later turned into a movie by E.B. White. It's about a spider that leaves messages in its web.
Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web, yeah.
Who doesn't like Charlotte's Web?
I know, he doesn't love Charlotte's Web.
I feel like all the movies from our childhood
I know.
were sad. What were they doing to us?
But yeah, I just thought that one was interesting because, like I said, when you're growing up, you don't really think of many, like, quote-unquote positive depictions of spiders as in TV shows and films and stuff. I mean, Charlotte's Web, obviously, the spiders.
That's a good point.
One of the good guys in the movie. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. I saw the movie, I didn't read the book.
Yeah. Same here, it's fine.
Okay, was that the last of trivia?
That's all I got. Thanks for playing along.
No, those are great.
Yeah.
Go
I love
look
it.
up for all our listeners. Go look up the peacock spider.
Okay.
Go look up the diving bell spider. These spiders are incredible.
Yeah, and the Darwin bark spider.
The Darwin bark spider, yeah.
And the trash line spider.
Oh,
and
don't
the
let us
ogre face
Yes,
spider. I know
ogre-
you can go
the ones
on.
you brought up. Yes,
Yeah.
I had to like write them down. But
And while you're at it, you might as well just watch Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. It's only a 3-hour movie. I'm sure you got time for
Mark,
it.
that's the opposite.
Is it 4 hours now? I don't
We need
know.
them to watch Charlotte's Web.
Sorry, yeah, Charlotte's Web. Maybe it's a double feature.
Yeah, we
my
have an
gosh.
entire day. Okay, well, thank you for your time, Kelly. Can we end with a what can I do? How can I be a better steward of the earth, better for spiders? Anything you've got for us? What can I do?
Well, I mean, like we always say, knowledge is power. So I think if we just, if everybody educates themselves on something that you might not know about, even the scary stuff, I think that's really important. There's a lot of amazing field guides out there to spiders of North America. I just got a couple myself that you can get off Amazon. There's also, if you live in Ohio, you can go on to the Division of Wildlife's website, which is actually ohiodnr.gov. And you can get free field guides there. You can download them. They have an amazing spider one that I refer to all the time if we get questions about identification. But they have other fun ones on there too. So if you want to learn about butterflies, bees, mammals, like there's a bunch of other field guides on there as well. So definitely check that out. If you have a spider or spiders in your backyard that you would like to get identified, there's a great website called bugguide.net. You can actually send photographs in, and they'll post them on their site, and they'll ID them for you. It's just a great way to learn about not just spiders, but other bugs that you have in your backyard that are super beneficial. So just keep that in mind, that spiders have their place, and they're there to take care of all the little microhabitats that are in your backyard. So they're not there. They're not hiding from you. I promise.
Well,
they're not like in the
not
dark
to get you. They're hiding from you because
they're hiding from you. Sorry, but they're not out to get you,
Yes.
and they're not going to leap on you when you least expect it.
Yes,
So
so they're
they're
trying to
really
stay
cool
away.
animals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like you said, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Live and let live. Don't feel the need to squish any of these spiders.
Exactly.
Just let them live their lives. They're just trying to
Exactly.
get away from you more than anything. I did want to piggyback off that really quickly, though. Something that we kind of had this brief discussion right before we started recording. Something that you had mentioned is like kind of helping people overcome a fear that they might have of spiders is exposure to spiders in like a safe setting, right?
Yes,
Like I
yeah.
thought that was really interesting.
Well, that's arachnophobia is if I can say it right, it's a diagnosed condition. It is a thing that really happens to people, and they actually do have treatment for it. And one of the treatments, believe it or not, is standing in front of a spider. Like they typically will bring out usually a tarantula, but getting exposure to these animals and being in their presence is actually one thing that helps people get over their fear of spiders. So
and probably in a controlled setting where you know you're about to see a spider, you know it's contained, or however they're showing it. It's not.
Yep.
I think the surprise element is what we're hearing from people's comments, and what we're finding on the internet is they feel like they're going to be surprised by spiders a lot, and that would not be a surprise if you sign up for that.
Exactly. Like if you're expecting it to be there, it's one thing. But we talk to, again, when we do tours, we talk to people about this kind of stuff all the time. Like because we'll bring a tarantula out and show people when we do tours, and we'll talk about it. And it's amazing how people will come into the tour really afraid of things, and when they leave, they love it. It's amazing. It's so great to see, but they have to have, I think, having that exposure. And it sounds totally crazy, but if there's something in front of you and it's a controlled environment and there's an expert talking about it, like it, I think it comforts people. And it's like, okay, yeah, this makes, again, the whole knowledge is power thing. Like, I didn't know that about this animal. I didn't know that it couldn't do this. Like and it is just sitting there minding its own business and not doing anything to me. It can't even see me. It doesn't know that I'm really here. So that is part of the treatment for arachnophobia. Like, and it works. They've proven that it works.
And you guys, you've mentioned the tours, but these are tours that people can sign up for on our website, correct? You guys have tours that you can come back and meet the insect keepers, and I'm guessing it's different for every tour for you guys, right? Do you pick out which insects you're showing, or
we do? Like, we usually,
is it different?
When people sign up for tours, like, we ask them in the beginning, is there something that you want to see? Because we have had people that come in that just want to see spiders.
Yeah.
But typically we have the usual insects that we bring out, like, because people love stick insects, for example.
Yeah.
So stick insects are a big highlight. But yeah, we'll focus on a particular animal if that's what people have an interest in.
Do you guys do those all year round, or are there certain times? So if you go onto the Cincinnati Zoo's website, you can find our tour section, behind the scenes, sign up for an insect tour. Yeah. Whether or not you're afraid of spiders, it could be a way to get over it.
It is, absolutely.
Learn some more.
Yeah.
Or if you're just interested in insects or spiders or all sorts of things that you guys take care of, they can come back and see them. And I'm sure I think it's probably a really intimate tour compared to, like, for example, our hippos. Like, you can be there, but you can't, like, get up really close. So you have to stay safe, but you guys will keep them safe.
Yeah, you can. It's cool. We have a lot more behind the scenes than we do on exhibit, and it's you can really get close to stuff. There are a couple things that you can hold.
Very cool.
And I think we're actually just getting ready to start up our tours. I believe in the next month or so, and I think it's called Behind the Bugs.
Okay,
is what it's called on the website. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We love showing off our animals.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the tours, 50% of the money goes to conservation. Do you guys have a
we
group
do the
that
same
you
thing.
support? What organization?
It really depends. I think last year we chose the Xerces Society for butterflies. They do a lot of things for monarchs.
Great.
Oh, cool.
So I believe that's what we chose last year. I think every year they ask us who we want to donate to.
Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys could be supporting conservation.
Absolutely.
At the same time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, teaching us so much about spiders. I learned a ton today.
I did too.
I love them even more now.
Excellent. I love it. That's what this is for. Thank you, guys.
Definitely. And all you listeners, next time you're visiting the zoo, be sure to swing by the World of the Insect. Take a look at some of these amazing spiders. Hopefully, even though it's spooky season, hopefully the spiders aren't scaring you anymore.
I hope not.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.